We'll get started. Austin will be making sure this is streamed today. So that's a notice to all who are joining that this is live streamed. I do want to just do a roll call because we are working virtually. So Commissioner Cameron, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am here.
Commissioner O'Brien.
I am here.
Commissioner Hill.
I'm here. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Yeah, and so we're all set to get started. This is a formal proceeding, so I do have some opening remarks. Today is, as we know, Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. This is an adjudicatory, I'm just going to pop over here, adjudicatory hearing before the Massachusetts Gaming Commission relative to the application for a license to conduct a racing meeting for calendar year 2022, submitted by Plainville Gaming and Redevelopment LLC, which I'll refer to as PGR. I'm Kathy Judstein and Chair of the Commission. I'm joined today by my colleagues, as we just heard, Commissioners Gail Cameron, Eileen O'Brien, and Brad Hill. The entire Commission will preside over the hearing and decision of this matter. This hearing will be conducted in accordance with 205 CMR 101.01, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Sections 10 and 11, and 801 CMR 1.02, the Informal Fair Hearing Rules. Before we begin, I'd like to explain the process that will govern this proceeding. First, a notice of hearing was provided to PGR in advance of today's hearing. It identifies 11 issues that will be the focus of the Commission's attention at this hearing. Though everything raised in the application is at issue, the Commission has indicated that it will specifically be considering the following: whether PGR has submitted an application that meets the requirements of General Laws, Chapter 128A, whether PGR has provided adequate answers to the questions set out by the Commission in the application, the financial ability of PGR to operate a racetrack per General Laws, Chapter 128A, Section 3i, the impact of the application on the maximization of state revenues per General Laws, Chapter 128A, Section 3i, the suitability of racing facilities for operation at the time of the year for which dates are assigned per General Laws, Chapter 128A, Section 3i, the circumstance that large groups of spectators require safe and convenient facilities per General Laws, Chapter 128A, Section 3i, the interest of members of the public in racing competition honestly managed and of good quality per General Laws, Chapter 128, Section 3i, the necessity of having and maintaining proper physical facilities for racing meetings per General Laws, Chapter 128A, Section 3i, the economic interest in investments of those who, in good faith, have provided and maintained such facilities per General Laws, Chapter 128A, Section 3i, whether the applicant is financially responsible, able to meet obligations to the Commonwealth, has suitable and safe facilities for the service of patrons, and is likely to conduct racing in accordance with approved practices and in a manner consistent with the public safety, health, morals, and welfare, including the suitability of the applicant and its leadership to hold or conduct a racing meeting, the reputation for honest dealing and gaming history of the applicant's ownership and leadership. At the conclusion of my opening comments, this proceeding will commence with the presentation of the evidence in this matter. Specifically, PGR will be called upon to present its application and call additional witnesses, if any. Any commissioner may ask a question of any witness who is testifying at any point during or following their presentation. The commission may then request testimony from any individual listed on the notice of hearing or witness list, including but not limited to Dr. Alexandra Lightbound, the Massachusetts Gaming Commission's Director of Racing. PGR may also ask questions of any witness who testifies. PGR may raise any objection it desires at any time. However, the basis for all objections must be clearly stated. Finally, at the conclusion of all the evidence, PGR will be provided an opportunity to make a closing statement to summarize its view of the evidence. Before we begin, I understand that there are pre-marked exhibits that have been prepared in advance of this hearing. Those exhibits are identified on the exhibit list that has been circulated to each commissioner. They are as follows. Exhibit 1, PGR's application for license to hold or conduct a racing meeting at Plainridge Racecourse for calendar year 2022, dated September 30th, 2021. Exhibit 2, notice of November 9, 2021 hearing, Ray, application dated October 29, 2021. Exhibit 3, notice of November 8, 2021 public hearing, Ray, application dated October 27, 2021. Exhibit 4, recording of November 8, 2021 public hearing, Ray, application. You have the link to that. Exhibit 5, written testimony submitted to the commission, Ray, the application. Exhibit 6, excerpt from 1962 Commonwealth of Massachusetts election statistics, public document number 43. And Exhibit 7, memorandum from Dr. Lightbound to the commissioners, Ray, the application dated November 8, 2021. Commissioners, are there any objections to exhibits 1 through 7 being marked and entered into evidence? Hearing none, thank you. Those exhibits shall be admitted into evidence. In order to maintain a clean record, I ask that documents are referred to by exhibit number. And if you don't have that handy, Councillor Grossman and Councillor Monahan can help us with that. If PGR would like to have any additional documents entered into evidence during the course of the hearing, I would ask that they be properly introduced and marked. No final decision will be made at the conclusion of the public portion of the hearing. Instead, at the conclusion of the proceeding, the commission will privately deliberate and ultimately issue a written decision. If at any point during the commission's deliberations it determines that further testimonial or documentary evidence is desirable, it reserves the right to ask PGR to provide such evidence prior to a final decision being made. We will now swear all the witnesses in. Anyone who will be testifying at this proceeding, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will provide before the commission at this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, and all have responded in the affirmative. Councilor Grossman. Before we begin, does PGR have any preliminary issues or objections?
We do not.
Okay. With that, I ask PGR to identify its first witnesses and present its application. Thank you, Mr. OToole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Steve OToole, Director of Racing at Plainville Park Casino. Thank you for the opportunity to present the application today. I'd also like to thank those that participated yesterday in the public comment period, especially the Chairman, Board of Selectmen, Brian Kelly, Police Chief, Plainville Police Chief Jim Floyd, and Plainville Fire Chief Rich Ball. So it's my honor to present the application for 2022. As I mentioned yesterday, This application will represent the 24th racing season here at the property. This will be the 9th application by Plainville Gaming and Redevelopment. It consists of the completed application, $25,000 bond continuation document, $100 licensing fee, and 16 exhibits will give evidence to the fact that this application meets the statutory criteria for licensure, which are financial ability to operate a racetrack, the maximization of state revenues, the suitability of a racing facility for operation at the time of the year for which the date is granted, the accommodation of large groups of spectators in a safe and convenient environment, affording public racing competition is honest and managed of good quality, and having the proper physical facilities for racing meetings, as well as the necessity to accord fair treatment to the economic interests and investments of those who in good faith have provided and maintained such facilities. Gaming and Redevelopment's parent company, Penn National Gaming, continues to be a leader in the gaming and the racing industry, and that reflects the ability to the financial ability to operate Plainridge, as well as Gaming's ability to operate in 13 other racing facilities in 9 other jurisdictions, including 3 off-track wagering facilities in 2 different states, with Penn National's ADW being Hollywood Races. It provides operation at Plainridge a great resource from the corporate racing team, especially the support guidance from my corporate vice president of racing, Chris McElwain. I'd like to highlight some of the points in Exhibit 25 that would point to why this application is beneficial to the public, the Commonwealth, and the applicant. Penn National Gaming is a substantial regional gaming operator with an outstanding financial capability and operational resources. Penn National Gaming takes pride in creating an inviting racing atmosphere by investing deeply both in the racing, customer side facing, and the horse racing side as well. The physical facilities for our racing meetings are state of the art here, and they're well maintained and provide a convenient and safe atmosphere for our customers and the horsemen, as you heard yesterday from testimony from both of the chiefs. The track is maintained with today's acceptable procedures and practices. We also continue to offer our racing officials the latest technologies to perform their duties and honestly manage the racing here at Plainridge. I believe that some of you on your recent visit have seen the judge stand, which indicates, that we have basically the top of the line equipment for them to judge the races. While the racing at Plainridge has been moving in positive directions in all facets of racing, the breeding and the racing, we did address head-on concern a few years ago with participation and field size, and we found that conducting around 110 racing days or less each season helped with the average number of races per day, as well as stabilize the field size. Well over $12 million this year, Plainridge has created a generator that maximizes state revenues. So again, we propose 110 days over a 33-week schedule. We want to come back to the actual nuts and bolts of the 22 schedule and expand on the current climate here in New England. The mid-April through the end of November schedule is consistent with past seasons. The facility is suited for the time of year which we have applied for, which is crammed into that opportunity zone that we have, excluding the winter months when the track isn't suitable. We believe there's sufficient evidence provided that granting these dates will be beneficial to our horsemen and the public, and in return provide for the fair treatment and economic interests of Plainville Gaming and Redevelopment. What I'd like to expand on for the on the nuts and bolts of the schedule, we are in the process. In New England, there are 3 commercial tracks operating in New England for harness racing right now. It would be Bangor in northern Maine, Cumberland in southern Maine, and Plainridge. And Plainridge is statutorily required to submit our application prior to the other commercial tracks in the region supplying their data applications. So when I was preparing this, we were kind of going in blind as to what the other tracks were going to be proposing for days of the week and when they were going to be racing. We have had about 4 or 5 conference calls between the 3 tracks. We work very well together. And National does operate Bangor, so it's a little bit easier to work with other entities that you're involved with. But Cumberland is a new track, raced its first season this year, and they've done well, and they're very good to work with. So what we try to maximize the ability of the horses in the area to move around if they so wish. We do have Massachusetts people that go up there and race, but we have a pretty fair amount of main entities that come down here and fill our races to the maximum ability that we can fill them. So on the heels of those meetings, we have talked about changing the days of the week that we're going to race, and changing. What I proposed in this application is a mirror to the 2021 racing dates, but working with the other tracks, I think those days of the week are going to change, and the 3 and the 4 day weeks may change as well. So I just wanted to give you the heads up on why that was taking place. Their dates are going in this month, and they're having a hearing this month on those dates up in Maine. So I think we worked out a pretty good schedule, and it's not completely finalized yet, but I think we worked out a good schedule where there's very little overlap. We have no control over a couple of the main fairs that race harness races at their fairs, but for the commercial tracks, there's very little overlap in any area. So it gives a long season to the horsemen and the participants in the New England area. It's very difficult to try to weave your way around all the racetracks in the Northeast, Yonkers, the upstate, Buffalo and Batavia, upstate New York, Saratoga, even as far down as the Meadows, Pocono, and the Pennsylvania tracks. But I think for the immediate area, I think we've done a pretty good job at identifying a lot of the benefits, both to the operator and to the horseman, that would work in the best interest of racing, not just at Plainridge, but in the area as well, and to keep it moving in the right direction, more or less. We recently, on Monday, concluded our 100th day this year, so we have 10 days left. Our season ends on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, Friday, November 26th. This season included the Spirit of Mass and the Clara Barton race, which are staples for us, but it also included the $2 million sire stakes that's spurned on by the standard bred breeding program in the state, which has done very well and has provided us with a lot of extra horses the past few years, because the breeding has come up in numbers substantially for them. I'd like to commend my racing staff for having a very successful year so far, and also the MGC racing team who assists us, and we try to assist them when we can. But they do a great job down there with all the testing and everything that they do. We appreciate their help. I thank you for the opportunity to present the application today. I think I hit all the marks that we needed to hit. If I didn't, you can question me on it. I can answer. I hope to be able to answer any questions that you have regarding my testimony and the application and any of the submissions, or just racing in general.
Questions, Commissioner Cameron?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. OToole, nice to see you. And I didn't in any way think your presentation wasn't complete, but I did have a question about, you mentioned, the work you've done with Maine in particular, in New England here, to make sure that the race dates kind of maybe opposite one another. I know what we've talked about in past years, and I was wondering, because you also mentioned that, everything is increasing, meaning purses and all aspects of racing have come up due to, the Racehorse Development Fund and all the efforts, including the breeding. But my question is, what will you do this year to ensure that our local horses and our local horsemen and women have those opportunities with those higher purses to compete? I know you've taken steps in the past, but if you could speak to the efforts you'll take this year to provide those opportunities.
So the opportunities with the numbers that we have, especially this past season, any horseman that wanted to race here that was local, that was of good character, was allowed to race and was never not given that opportunity. There's been plenty of opportunities, but also there are allowances. There was a lot of ideas batted around throughout the years of a bonus program or different things for Massachusetts owned horses or local horses or whatever. Paul Verrett, my race secretary, came up with a very good plan, very good idea, where we might have even pushed it over the limit with some of the allowances that we gave. So in other words, if you have a horse that, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term maidens, but maidens are horses that haven't won yet. And then there's non-winners of 2 and non-winners of 4 races and non-winners of 6, and it goes up the ladder. So if you are 100% Massachusetts owned, you get an additional win. So if you win a non-winners of 2 and it's your second win, you can actually go back in there until you win 3 races. Whereas a Maine or a New York horse would not have that same opportunity to remain in that class. Also, on some of our classes, there are earnings requirements, conditions. So a non-winners of $5,000, its last 4 starts or its last 5 starts. If you were Massachusetts owned, it would be it would be 6,000 or 5,800 or some a number that would increase that Paul puts on that class. There's also a caveat for Massachusetts bred horses. They also get the additional an allowance, an extra win or whatever. So actually, a Massachusetts owned horse could have 3 wins on its card and compete in a non-winners of 4. And that's a huge advantage for the people that are involved in the breeding program and the people that are involved in our racing here that are Massachusetts owners.
It's also a great incentive to stay home and race here, right?
Correct. Yep.
Great. Thank you for that, Mr. O'Toole.
Another question for Mr. O'Toole. Commissioners? Commissioner O'Brien, Commissioner Hill. So I have a couple of questions. Commissioner Cameron, do you have another question? Not right now? Okay. So if I understand correctly, it's going to be 110 days over the 33 weeks, but the days themselves may change from the application. That's just based on that good coordination with the other 2 tracks. Is that right?
Yes, pretty much, yes.
And then ultimately this year, you'll have, I know we approved the 2 racing dates the other day because of the heat. So, and ultimately you'll have raced how many this past year?
When we're finished, we'll do 110. Exactly what we had put in for.
Right. So, and again, for next year, always safety first for the horses. If there's any reason to cancel, we try to make those up at the end of the season.
We try to make them up at the most opportune time, but because of the date of those cancellations, we were heading into our 4-day-a-week schedule, and so it was very tricky putting those 2 dates back in the.
All right, really helpful. Can you go over just any improvements you've made with respect to facilities or the track this past year, if any?
So we put in the famous side door that we talked about at a previous meeting. That's one of the few things that we've done. What we plan to do this off season is because we rearranged the backside so much for the COVID protocols, we kind of tore it apart, and we want to try and put it back together and go back to a little bit more cohesive atmosphere. Utilizing the paddock again. The paddock is very sparsely used because we started using the barns, and I've had some conversations with the horsemen. I've had a few conversations with Alex about this, but we are gonna get together with Dominic, the director of non-gaming operations, who's in charge of facilities, and I know that there's a project. Actually, I think he might even be out there now, looking at some of the rougher areas of the barns that have rotted around the bases and things like that. That we're getting a quote from Bristol Construction to fix that up. So we have a lot of work to do. We didn't do much this year. We were kind of recuperating from the pandemic situation, and we really ripped the place apart in order to accommodate the social distancing, and we need to put that back together in some shape or form that works for everyone.
And in terms of the track, from last year, were there improvements made?
So every year, I put we put a lot of material on that track and maintain that track to the best of our ability. We have added the exact tonnage that we've put on the track, but I know it's substantial. We have purchased about 20 of the material that we use. We use 3 some materials. We use a stone dust material. We use a quarter-inch cut, and we use a rice material. Mixed together. We've at least 20 triathletes so far this year. The surface itself is very consistent. We try to keep that consistent.
Thank you for that. And then the last question, and I'm not sure if it's part of Commissioner Cameron's, but the minimum purse is $4,000, and I don't remember what it was this year.
The minimum purse that I put in the application is $4,000, but we haven't been down that low for quite some time. It's about $6,000.
That's what I thought. Okay, so that's also flexible, right? Okay.
Yeah, we have. I don't think there was one. I don't think there was one race that went for $4,000 this year. The minimum kind of consistently stayed at $6,000. Our average purse is almost $11,000 on the average race. So some are below that, some are higher than that.
Okay.
We're talking about $25,000 for the open.
And then my last question, and then I'll go back to my fellow commissioners. Mr. OToole, yesterday we had the public hearing, and there was a question raised by a constituent about local approval. If I remember correctly, how many races, how many seasons have you been associated with racing in Plainville?
I've been associated with all 24.
Right.
22 on this side of on the management side of things.
Right, and your application does show that in 1997, it was a lovely town administrator who was so creative with respect to the community host agreement. Mr. Fernandez, Joe Fernandez, included the letter, and the letter stated September 29th, but it was confirming the local approval by the Board of Selectmen on September 8th. And since then, has there been ever any question about the validity of the local approval? Has that ever come up with respect to season after season before PGR took over?
No, there's never been a question on it. I can go back in time a little bit because I wasn't involved on the management side, but I was involved in the racing side. Attended all the meetings. And I called Ellen Robertson, the clerk, yesterday after the meeting to find out if there was evidence of the notice, and she said that they don't keep the notices after a year. They don't keep the notice, but she says that she's fairly confident because bringing a racetrack to Plainville was very substantial at the time, and the minutes and the people that attended and asked questions that are noted in the minutes would have been there would have been adequate notice, and also then on the heels of the approval of the location, it was multiple night hearings that I believe Alex may remember as well, in the town, because there was a lot of questions about bringing a racetrack to Plainville, and I know that there was more than one night, and I know they started it at 7 o'clock and didn't get over until almost 11 each night, and because obviously I wanted to see the track built at the time because I was on the racing side. So there was a lot of chatter, and there was never a question about whether or not the acted appropriately in approving the locations, or that it was posted properly. I never ever questioned about it.
And in fact, Mr. Fernandez's letter says it was properly posted, and then he signed off on it in his role as town administrator on behalf of the board. So that's really helpful. Thank you for going back and looking into that history for us. Appreciate that. Commissioner O'Brien, are you leaning in for a question? Okay. Commissioner Cameron, are you leaning in?
I am not. All my questions have been answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hill, do you have any questions for Mr. O'Toole?
I have no questions either, Madam Chair. The last one that you asked was something of concern to me, but it's been addressed.
Okay, great. But we could circle back to Mr. O'Toole. We do have the opportunity to hear from Dr. Lightbound now. If we have questions for her. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Alex.
Good afternoon. First, I want to just echo Steve's comments about the working relationships between his staff, our staff, and the HHANE. It was a relief to everybody this year when the COVID protocols could be lessened after what we went through last year, which was very challenging. So I appreciate everybody working through those issues last year, and then this year we had a great racing season so far. As has been mentioned, PPC is on track to race the 110 days that they asked for last year, and that will meet their requirements under 128C for simulcasting. That's also the number that they have asked for in the application this year. They would be meeting the requirements of 128C for that. They also have met their financial obligations, don't have any debts with the commission, and there haven't been any violations of the pari-mutuel wagering regulations. I'll keep my part short. The only thing we recommend is that there's an independent expert come in to review the track surface. This is something we've done, I believe, since 2015. And it's not a reflection on any problems that we're seeing with the track. It originally, we started doing it because of Suffolk's shortened festival meets, and we wanted a review of that surface before they actually raced on it. And at the time, the commission felt, and rightly so, that if we were doing it for Suffolk, we should probably also do something along those lines for Plainridge. So that's worked very smoothly over the years. Steve's been able to bring somebody in and review the track. His track superintendents have been very gracious to have somebody come in, and sometimes they have some, little ideas of different things that may help a little bit. So I think it's been worthwhile, and we'll ask for them to do that again. And then the only thing, as Steve has mentioned, he and the HHANE are still working on what a final schedule for next year will look like. And so at some point, they can bring that back either to me, or if there's going to be substantial changes to the commission, and just for approval of what their final schedule for next year might look like.
Questions for Dr. Lightbound or comments? Commissioner Cameron.
Good afternoon, Dr. Lightbulb. I know your emphasis, as long as I've been working with you, has always been with health and safety, meaning, the health and safety of, as a vet, of the horses, as well as the men and women involved with this sport. There's nothing, I didn't see anything, but I know how thoroughly you look at an application. I didn't see anything different, anything that would give us pause because there's something we're not quite sure about or is different than the last year or two, because we know there have been substantial changes over the years. Is my assessment accurate that that there's nothing there that should give us pause as far as a change from, say, last year to this year, other than, say, COVID-related issues?
Yes, that is correct. And I think the safety records have they stood the test of time, and obviously we are always reviewing things and seeing if there's anything new out there that we can adopt, but there aren't any substantial changes.
Great.
To the application.
Thank you. And last question is, I see the 110 days this year as same as last year. That used to be somewhat contentious, racing days, but it seems everyone is working effectively. And I appreciated Mr. OToole mentioning a study that was done to determine for all those involved the appropriate number of days. So that was a smooth piece of this application as far as you're aware?
Yes, like I said, they are, as far as I know, talking to both parties, they are still attempting to come up with what the final schedule will be. But both sides seem to be negotiating in good faith, and the different concerns, for instance, this year, there were a few days where the 4 days a week, it was hard to get enough horse entries. So that's what the horsemen and Steve are looking at, is what the best way to address that is, so that the days do have full fields and full number of races. So,
okay,
it's
excellent.
Excellent communication between the parties.
Great, thank you for that.
Other questions for Dr. Lightbound? So I don't think the lack of questions is any indicator other than our confidence in your review of the application, Alex. Thank you so much. Mr. OToole, I want to give you the opportunity to make any kind of a closing statement, if you have one, before we adjourn our public component of this adjudicatory hearing.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks again, commissioners, for the opportunity to present the application for 2022. As always, it's a pleasure to appear before you and give you recaps of the season or apply for dates for the following season. You accept the condition to have the track evaluated. That's always worked out well. On a side note to that, my track super attends the annual conferences for track superintendents, which gives him a good indicator of what's going on as far as the latest technologies for track maintenance. And more importantly, it was an internal fight because we just went through our budget hearings. I was told that corporate feels things don't change that much at these conferences from year to year, so maybe send them every other year, 3 years. It's more, I explained that it's more about relationships than really it is about anything that's changing in the business. Relationships that are valuable, and when my track super finds an issue that he's struggling with, he can go to these other guys, see if they've struggled with the same issue or have any ideas. So, and Chris McElwain is a big proponent of the track super at all the tracks attending that conference. So that's been a good thing. And again, I just want to thank Alex for her team on there because definitely works smoother when what I have that I can rely on. I'm some of the trickier issues when it comes to racing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I make the concluding,
Just one other thing for new Commissioner Hill. I know he's seen us up on the Hill in the cantankerous simulcasting debates and the simulcasting rollovers. So now he gets a chance to see what it's like on this side.
yeah, and he's been down to the racetrack. We just have to get him into the lead car.
Yep.
That's next on the list.
Sure.
Everyone's favorite day as a Mass Gaming Commissioner. Before I make my concluding statements, I think all of us recognize, because Dr. Lightbound is so good at reminding us, that there are so many jobs and opportunities created by this industry, not just those that we see at the track, but all of those that come through the ancillary businesses and the breeding and the retail that comes out of it. There's so many opportunities, and they're grounded in history. So we appreciate today's application. It's an annual process. We'll be adjudicating in private, but we appreciate today your fulsome report and acknowledge the jobs that were created and opportunities that were created over the past year. So unless, commissioners, you have any further questions for Mr. OToole or PGR, we'll conclude this portion of the proceeding. Anything that you're leaving on the table? Okay, great. Commission will now deliberate about the matter in private and issue a written decision. This portion, however, remains open. Just a reminder that should we decide that we need anything further for our decision making, we'll come back and make that request. And there's Light again. It's a little bit of a distraction, so sorry. We'll make sure that we get what we need, but this has been a very fulsome report today. So thank you. Commissioners, that means that I say goodbye, and then I believe we have another invitation that will go into our virtual room for our adjudicatory and our deliberatory processes. So thank you, Mr. OToole. Thank you, everyone. Lisa, I know you were there. Thank you so much. We appreciate everyone's attention today and appreciate those who've joined us. Thank you.